Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back once again for another episode of the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where every day I beam your ears to a different part of the world and learn how technology is transforming businesses, industries, our lives, and indeed world. But one of the things that often frustrates me about the tech industry is the way that people use technology to create a solution and then go out searching for a problem to solve, because it should always be the other way round. And that is one of the reasons I am excited to get today's guest onto the podcast. Because Bitfury Surround was founded in January 2019 and is the music and entertainment unit of the Bitfury Group. And that name alone will probably remind you of $500 million a year revenues and selling hardware for Bitcoin mining. But we're not here to talk about that today. Like I say, we're talking about the Bitfury Sound. And the Surround platform will be a fully interoperable digital ecosystem for the exchange and monetization of copyrights. But what does all that mean? Well, my understanding is that their goal is to significantly increase the value of copyrights, strengthen trust, transparency, and efficiency across the entire industry. But today's guest, Stefan Schulz, who is the CEO and co-founder of Bitfury Surround, is going to join us on the podcast to tell us all about it. And he has been working in the music industry for more than 20 years, pioneering the use of technology for the benefit of artists. I mean, in short, he knows the industry inside out because he knows what problems need solving, and he's now turning to technology to fix those problems the right way. And he has quite a history too, because in 2016, Stefan joined forces with Simon Fuller to create the first global pop group based entirely on social media and audience engagement. And more recently, he led the design of digital live entertainment rights, including social media, AR, VR, and streaming content for artists, promoters, and music labels. And not only that, he's worked with globally known artists such as Eminem, 50 Cent, Snoop Dogg, Rihanna, Snow Patrol, U2, Florence and the Machine, Gwen Stefani, the list goes on and on. He's an incredibly cool guy that has been added to my list of cool guys I want to share a beer with. So come and join me in Berlin in Germany, where Stefan is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
So my name is Stefan Schulz. I've actually been in this industry, in the entertainment and music industry for like 30 years, 35 years, and also in digital since 2002. And ever since, I've actually been working on the edge of entertainment and technology with the main focus on how to drive value from technology in a sustainable way for big organizations like Vivendi and Universal, for example, but also for from a smaller perspective, that is individual artist or copyright owners' perspective. And so I've been doing like the transition and the transformation of the business into something that is non-traditional, if you will, but at the same time also, exciting, but kind of transforming the way that the value is being managed, not knowing really where things go, which is very, very difficult in our industry, as you know, because we are working with old contracts sometimes, and nobody knows really what the technology is all about. But at the same time, it's very exciting and everybody wants to participate. So there's a lot of opportunity, but there's also a lot of risk for individuals in this mix.
And before you came on the podcast today, I did do a little bit of research. And I quickly learned that, like you said, you've had 20 years experience in the music industry. And I'm curious, how have you seen technology transform that industry in those 20 years? Because I would imagine there's been some pretty big changes.
Yeah, that's right, as a matter of fact, because when I started working for Polygram in 1998, basically Polygram was a joint venture between Siemens and Philips at that time. So more coming out of the, I remember we had contracts which were really chemistry industry, chemical industry focused,
Yeah.
and it was really dominated by physical formats and how you can put physical formats out, produce and put it out into the market, and then it changed more and more into like the more non-tangible intellectual property being carried over to some either still physical stuff like merchandising, licensing products, like going into complete different environments and realizing value there. And then ultimately when in 2001, 2002, 3, something like that, then mobile networks came up, and there was a first opportunity really to create, let's say, value around digital formats for the very first time in the form of ringtones, for example, in streaming and in downloads at that time. That was very exciting because this was the very first time that we were kind of letting go the physical part of things, and where the digital market started to shape, and that's very, very exciting.
And with 500 million in revenue, Bitfury is still best known for many people listening for selling hardware for Bitcoin mining. So what was the catalyst for building this blockchain services in a music entertainment division for the industry? Because I feel like there's got to be a story there as well.
I think the story behind, it's actually two stories that met, because I wanted to, I saw a big opportunity personally in, connecting the dots in this industry and using this blockchain technology for, let's say, for something meaningful in the music industry, in the creative industries. And at the same time, Bitfury, I suppose, have been toying, or they started toying with the idea to transform and transition their business more in a very sustainable way into the software sector and into the services sector.
Because the mining business will probably be over in 2140.
It has to be kind of replaced by something that is that has very strong and powerful, let's say, mass market capabilities, because that's really when you have to put your equipment and your networks and the entire processing power into complete new environments. So they started, with security divisions and software and land titling and other things, like for example AI services, and they have this very, very big AI department now. And I thought that I think that entertainment was really one of those very compelling markets, which appear to be small. If you really think about it, it's really big, because there's hardly any industry that can move as many data points as the music industry. Where can you really generate 1 billion data points in the case of Billie Eilish in a couple of days? It's very, very, so I think this was very compelling for them. And also they were building a platform that is mainly, a second layer on Bitcoin, on the Bitcoin network, that is actually really capable of running verticals. So if you really think about tokenized economies and the internet, networks, verticals that need to be processed in the future, and you believe that blockchain is a big driving force in processing the value and the information at the same time, I think this is a very, very interesting market.
And I think we've both seen the latest technology-based solutions that are actually just tech looking for a problem to solve. But I'm curious, as someone that's been in the music industry for so long, and you know what those kind of problems that need solving, how do you think blockchain can actually solve those problems and revolutionize the way that the music industry is done? Because it's what I think is unique about your approach is you know the problems and then you're looking at how tech can solve them, whereas so many now are doing it the other way around, aren't they?
In my opinion, it's exactly what you're saying. If you have a hammer and then everything looks like a nail, for example, you're just trying to bring up a problem. In my case, it was really the opposite, because I was, I've been in this industry for a long time, seen many artists. now the labels and others fighting in this market for the actual value of the data points, which is, of course, if you look at the data economy, it's huge. Look at Facebook, look at Apple, look at Amazon, and look at all these guys. I mean, if you really think that the music industry has recovered and is great, then we all know that this is just a very tiny little bit of interpretation. The market is still below 2001 numbers. It has hardly any control. There's very little leverage over the platform economy. So it's a very tricky market, and what I could see that the one of the core issues, apart from the administrative stuff, all the inefficiencies in terms of how the business is organized today, and the failure of really connecting the dots in terms of really getting access to where the value is made, where the value is generated in the data points. There is a very significant underlying issue, which is the issue of trust, right? So that you have a collaborative product, which is a music product. So many people are involved. In some cases, up to 100. It's not the norm, but it's a very fragile already in the beginning. There is it's very little, I would say, confrontation with how you split whatever is going to be generated out of this. So that's already where it starts in between the creative forces. The typical thing, you and I, let's do something together. And then if it's successful, then we argue again and say, that's not what we wanted to do. And then at the same time, also, between all the different stakeholders that are very well know each other. That's one of the key preconditions to do a blockchain thing. If you have few people that know each other but don't trust each other, and this is widely spread in this industry. So you have organizations, collecting societies, labels, publishers, DSPs, digital service providers. You have artists, co-artists. So you have a lot of people in the mix that are somehow a family, but none of these guys is really acting in the way that the other expected them to act, right? And it's kind of something that everybody's been accepting more and more, but it's not right if you really think about it, right? So to keep tabs here on the truth and also to understand what happens is, I think, very important in order to bring trust to this industry. Now, the thing is, why you see so many people being upset is because if big organizations, platforms, like the subscription services now and everything, if they are walking away with the value, then all of a sudden, of course, people below, they don't have the capabilities like Disney, for example, to say, I'm stepping out of Netflix, it's not me. They are really kind of fighting themselves, right? This is why you see so many, I don't recall in the last 20 years to have seen so many lawsuits and cases. Every week there is something. And it's really because there is a lot going on in between the people. And I think that, if you put, let's say, a consistent piece of information into this market, and you really do not allow any more for misinterpretation of the truth in 100 different ways, I think this is very, very powerful as a basis to let the market grow again.
Absolutely. So can you tell me a little bit more about the fully interoperable digital ecosystem Surround is developing? My understanding is it enables third-party APIs and a dynamic marketplace. So can you expand on that a little?
Yeah, it sounds very fancy. What actually, the way we see it is actually super simple. You have one KPI in the entire business, which is you have an origination point. It's like the genesis of your repertoire, of your digital asset, your creative asset, not digital, could be whatever. And then in the end, you have, let's say, legal protection until, normally in most of the countries, 70 years plus the lifetime of the artist. So let's say, for example, roughly 100 years, or 120 years, or 130 years, whatever. That means that basically what you're trying to do as an artist is you have to optimize the value coming out of this, right? So you know that other industries are fighting for these windows. Like, for example, the pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. They have 20 years, so they have to do whatever it takes in order to get the value out of this. So if you really think about, that's what an artist also needs to do for themselves, for their families, for their next generations and all this stuff. So now to have this opportunity to navigate through this lifetime, where everything is actually digital nowadays. It's like, let's say 90%, but most of it is digital. And even if you have a physical situation, like in the ticketing, for example, it's still digital because the tickets are digital. So in any case, anything that you do throughout this lifetime is kind of linked to data points. So what we needed to make sure is, and this is also the power that we have with this huge processing power of Bitfury and with this technology in the background, is really to make sure that you can navigate these data points along the way of this lifetime, right? So in order to do that, you can call it peer-to-peer, but you have to be, let's say, putting the individuals in a position to interact with each other based on one single truth, but at the same time directly if they want, or if they do not want, then collaboratively. It doesn't matter. It's really about getting people to interoperate commercially, right? In a kind of an automated way. So what this means is that you basically kind of have to standardize the economic process. I mean, the commercial tools in between, which is something that Apple did very well in a closed environment when they came into the market, and you have an app store and that's it. And we are in Bitfury and Surround. What we are doing is we are opening a whole new decentralized but open environment for this. So people would interact with these tools, and everything that they do, it can be related to, and it can be put into the lifetime vision of this copyright. So that an artist, on the other hand, by the means of maybe a dashboard or some sort of control panels, right, will be able to navigate and to understand and to follow what's happening with their assets. And I think this is roughly what we are about. In a concrete way, there will be a marketplace so people can participate. There is going to be like kind of a copyright control environment in which you would be able to make sure that your identity cannot be stolen. You're secure with what you have achieved, and you can always prove that it's your asset. So there's no identity theft or other things like that. And those are the tools. Now, when you think a little bit further down the line, 10 years or 5 years from now, then you all of a sudden you can understand that based on the data that is really then anchored and proven, so everybody can see it. You can, of course, add AI, and you can add like all different kinds of next generation technologies in order to blow this, to grow this, right? Mm. So this is pretty much what it means. You have hundreds of people, thousands of people that want to interact with an artist. They do not have the means today. They do not know how to pay and how to do all these things. Labels and other stakeholders are sometimes really like, it's not that they are overpricing, it's also that they have to see all the jungle and they have to understand what everything is. It takes some time, there's a delay, and we are going to facilitate all this so that you have a much easier way to do commerce with your repertoire, with your creative products and projects.
And I'm curious, what kind of feedback have you received from the music industry? Do you think it will be challenging to increase adoption, or have they been quite welcoming?
So far, I was really surprised. I have to say that most actually all of the stakeholders we've been talking to were very, very intrigued, and they are very positive about this. And I think, because the underlying, purpose behind this is to introduce transparency, who is going to argue against transparency?
Yeah.
I think that to have a second layer on Bitcoin blockchain is very helpful because it's so robust, and I think there is a strong need for a blockchain play that is tailored, because the permissionless environment is too heavy for creative industries, because it will ultimately give you, let's say, you will potentially lose control over the creative process as well, right? So you could theoretically have a complete anarchy. So the industry really needs like kind of a hybrid between permission and permissionless. And I think this has been very, very well received. There's no such a thing today in the world as a bespoke blockchain solution for entertainment. And so this is the first thing. And the second thing is also that in terms of like how can you scale such a thing, and how can you can run it and audit it and all this kind of stuff. This is of course where Bitfury has a very strong legacy. So I think that part has been very well received. Now, when it comes to how can I apply this in a sense that it doesn't hurt my business?
Yeah,
because that's ultimately what's going to happen. You probably have to go through a little bit of it's kind of a leap of faith. This is what we have now been, what we have now been working with the industry on. And this is also very, very difficult to create adoption, because at the same time the industry is booming for the moment. So you would have to, what I mean. It's of course a challenge, but I would say that 90% of the people that we have been working with, and as you know, I'm quite familiar with this with this in marketplace. 90% of the industry knows that this is exactly the direction where it has to go, and that we will potentially figure out a very fair way to address all the different issues without putting anybody like really in an awkward spot, so to speak, right? So it will take a little bit of time. But I think if we go one by one, tackle the issues, I think that's going to just work out fine.
And anyone that follows this space on the internet would have seen videos of Bill Gates on David Letterman and David Bowie predicting the power of the internet 25 years ago, and nobody believed them. But here in 2020, anyone that mentions the word blockchain or crypto, including myself, are treated as heretics too. So for people listening that struggle to get beyond the hype and the buzzwords, how do you think blockchain will change the world? And can you just put that in a language that would help them get on board and understand that it is so much more than just hype and buzzwords?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question that that has been that a whole industry has been struggling with, not because we are not 100% sure what we are doing. It's more because there are two sides to the story. So one of the things is that accountability, transparency, and actually the immutability of information is something that is extremely important to let's say to secure peace and growth and all this kind of stuff. So like if you would ask me now 20 years ago, you would say like, 1984, Now, today, something is happening. Where's the CCTV camera? Who looked at it? Please show me the tape. Show me this. Show me that. So, in other words, the world today does not even work without recording. I even see it in the screen here. You're recording me. That means that why are we doing this? Because we need to protect people from public security and public place and all this kind of stuff. So there is a certain vulnerability to the digital markets, especially, that if you don't ring fence it, you get carried away with the scalability. And I don't want to accuse anybody in Silicon Valley, but you just don't stop it because you want to grow. And you do, in the end, it's like the instinct that you would potentially leave behind certain, stuff like data privacy and all this kind of things. So in a very I would say in a very special way, blockchain as an interpretation of a let's say a respectful way of going forward based on accountability, transparency, and like some kind of a secure keeping track of things is also very protective, and it's also very good for society, and it will allow in the end to put the motivation and the incentives in the right direction. Right, so that is why I think it's very, very profound, and it works. Right, and you can see it with the Bitcoin blockchain. Okay, you can have a little bit of here and a little bit there, some hacks on the, like on some browser, wallets and stuff like that. But in general, it's a super, super safe thing. Right, most in this technology is extremely reliable, and it puts also the power of the decentralization into something that I believe is very, very positive for the future, because it's from politics to let's say technology and platforms and stuff like that. People really get carried away by their powers and egos and all this kind of stuff, and this technology is kind of putting the plug on this, and that's what I like so much about it. And especially if you're as vulnerable as individuals, like, now you see it in politics, but in the music industry, we've been looking at Prince saying, I was like, or George Michael trying to commit suicide several times, bad contracts and things like that. Organizations saying you will be now for the rest of your life under my rule. You know what I mean? Things like that, where you have very, very fragile individuals that you really do not know what's going on and really don't care. They just want to make music and other things. They want to be creative. I think this is a very, very, very beautiful technology that will help to make the world a better place. And that's why I like it.
And what about Bitfury Surround? What excites you about the future for what you guys are building here? Not just now, but how it will evolve into something much bigger as well. What is it that excites you about the project?
What I love about it is that it has the potential, and that's also what I, if you remember the beginning of the whole Bitcoin story, where you're banking the unbanked and all this kind of stuff. It's like it will allow so many creative people from all over the world, against or with their governments and their regulations, to participate in this marketplace and to be remunerated and to make a living out of their talent and out of their, let's say, passion, and it will go across borders. It will go across relationships. It will go across, like constraints and all this kind of stuff. So I really believe that I think it's very exciting to see so much talent coming in. Just imagine South America, Africa, India, all these places where all of a sudden you can just have a wallet and boom, you get some money. You can potentially you can participate in a podcast or in a song, in a remix somewhere else in the world, without having, to look for somebody to give you access to the market, because you can just connect. So easy connection for talent and easy connection for everybody that really wants to work with the talent. So today, that is a nightmare. You have so many different, you have constraints, more constraints than actual opportunities, because it is so complicated to work with this market. So to put these things together, I think is very, very precious. And I think the innovation that I can imagine to happen, because we are just kind of dumb technology underneath, is I'm very excited to see, to see all these different things, because now if you think about it, $9 out of 10 or even $95 out of 100 just come from one exploitation scheme, which is streaming.
Yeah.
Just imagine, this is one single thing that is being done with your creativity. So I think we will see in a couple of years, 5-10 years, we will see hundreds of things happening with entertainment. And I'm very excited to provide, let's say, an open, decentralized platform to see that happen, to make that happen.
Incredibly exciting times. And for people listening that are inspired by listening to your vision for the future there, what's the best way of finding you guys online and contacting your team or joining your community if they've just got any additional questions?
Yeah, so we are actually going to relaunch our website because we are kind of leaving the project phase, which is great. So of course, as you understand it, as such a technology company in the background, everything has already been worked on for 4 or 5 years, right? So it's not. So what we are now doing is we are going to relaunch our website next week, I think. On Friday this week. So you're welcome to go to www.surround.com. And you can also reach us by email. There are some links for developers, because we're going to open up our developers platform next week. So there are plenty of ways to reaching us in Berlin or in Amsterdam or elsewhere. So
well, I'll add all those links to the blog post that will accompany this podcast as well. But what I love about your story is you've had 20 years experience in the music industry. You've seen those problems firsthand, but now you're using technology and Surround, of course, for that new future, for a future vision for music. And I think it's really exciting. So I'd love to stay in touch with you and follow you throughout this journey. But more than anything, Stefan, just thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So many big talking points, such as how blockchain technology can revolutionize the way that music business is done. More particularly, of course, about how assets are tracked and monetized, but in a transparent and trusted way. As well as that interoperable digital ecosystem that Surround is creating there that enables third-party APIs and a dynamic marketplace. So on my next trip to Berlin, I promise to sit down with Stefan for a large cold beer and a hot currywurst and try and get some of them rock and roll stories out of his head too. So thank you so much, Stefan, for taking the time to speak with me today. But for everyone listening, what were your takeaways from today's conversation? As always, my door is open to each and every one of you. You can email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find over 1,130 different interviews and over the last 4 or 5 years I've been doing this podcast. So I hope you all enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did, and you'll join me all again tomorrow, where I'll beam your ears to another side of the world, where we hear another tale of how technology is transforming a business or indeed industry. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.